Hi guys, so we're going to do section 510, solving quadratic equations by factoring. And we did this in our notes, I think a couple sections back, but just to go over the different methods to solve a quadratic equation. Number one, you can just take the square root. That means it's already a perfect square, so you don't have to do a whole lot here. Number two, you could factor it if it's factorable. And this is what we're going to do today. Number three, you can complete the square, meaning you're going to take some quadratic equation and force it to be a perfect square. And then number four, you're going to use the quadratic formula, which we haven't learned yet. These last two will always work for any equation. The first two, it depends on the problem you're given. Sometimes they'll work, sometimes they won't. The other thing is just to remind you about a quadratic equation. The highest exponent would be a 2. So they take this form, something squared, usually plus some number x, plus some number would be the general form. All right, so that's the big picture. And we're just going to work these by example. You've already done this for, I guess, for the most part, you've done this already, but you may not remember, and there may be a couple little things that come up that you haven't seen. So we're going to go over a few examples. So we'll start with a pretty straightforward one. Minus 10 equals 0. Now, you want it to equal 0. This is different from completing the square, right? Because when you complete the square, you want to put this number on the right side. But when you factor, you want to have all your terms on the left and then equal 0 on the right. 0 on right. So make sure if it's not set up that way in the initial problem that you move everything to the left and have this guy 0. All right, then you're going to factor it. And look for the GCF. You know, you follow your basic factoring steps, so there is no GCF. So I'm just going to go ahead and factor. These two at the end have to multiply to the last number. So 2 times 5 makes 10. Now, if 2 and 5 didn't work, I would try 10 and 1 to factor it. But I know 2 and 5 are going to work. And then we'll get the signs in there. So you have the inner and the outer have to add to the middle number. So I need to make the 5x the negative and the 2x the positive. All right, that's all review. Now, we want to figure out what x's will make this equation true. That means what will make it that'll make this side equal 0. So you look at each parenthesis or each piece and ask yourself what x would make just that piece 0. Well, negative 2. If I put a negative 2 in here, that means if I put a negative 2 in both places, this parenthesis will go to 0. This one will be negative 7, but who cares about this one? Because 0 times whatever is going to be 0. Now let's see what would drive this parenthesis to be 0. Positive 5. Because if I put a 5 in both places, this would be a 7, but who cares? This will be a 0, and 7 times 0 is 0. So those are my two answers. So you're going to answer them. And I want you to sketch the parabola. And remember, the parabola is the shape of the graph that quadratic equations make. Don't do it on graph paper, just a simple sketch. It doesn't have to be, the scale doesn't have to be accurate. Those are my two x-intercepts. And then we're just going to assume all the parabolas are upright for now. They may or may not be. And there we go. Just a simple sketch. Okay, number 2. Okay, we'll do s squared equals 18s minus 81. Now this one isn't set up the way we want it, so we need to throw these two terms on the left side. So we're going to toss them over just like a volleyball over the net. And remember to change their signs when you move them over. So s squared minus 18s, this will become a positive 81. Now it equals 0. Okay, and just looking at this, you could factor it trial and error. I'm recognizing this as a perfect square. So 9s, right? 9s doubled is 18s. So we've got s minus, first sign, 9 squared equals 0. Well, what this means is you've got s minus 9 times s minus 9 times itself. So I know the answer is going to be 9 for each parenthesis. 9 will make each one go to 0. 9 is the same as 9. So we only have one answer. S is 9. Well, what does that mean for the parabola, though? Because you always think of it as looking like this, where it crosses in two places and it has two x-intercepts, and normally it does have two. But sometimes it'll have one or none. So if it has one, what this is called is a double root. A root is a solution. It's a double. It's really 9 and 9. Because technically, every quadratic equation has two answers. They may be double root. One might be they might be imaginary. Don't worry about that. But anyway, this has one real root. So you just graph it, and it means the parabola just touches there. It doesn't actually go through. All right, example 3. See if I can speed this up a little bit. 2x squared plus 5x equals 12. Okay, first thing, no GCF. We want a 0 on the right side. So let's toss the 12 to the left, and that gives me 2x squared plus 5x minus 12 equals 0. All right, and these are all going to factor, so you're not going to have any primes here. So 2x and x. Now I need to think about, let's see. Let's try 4. If I do 4 and 3, yeah, I think that's going to work. 4 and 3. I'll have 8 and 3. I can get to a 5. All right, now we need a positive 5, so it needs to be a negative 3, positive 8. FOIL if you're not sure. 2x squared. This is 8x and negative 3x. That will make 5x. The last will be negative 12. We want to figure out what makes each parenthesis 0. Well, this one's easy. Negative 4, because negative 4 plus 4 will go to 0. This one is less clear. If you can't see it by looking at it, remember that you want to just write a little equation and say 2x minus 3 equals 0. To set this equal to 0 and solve. We did this with those restrictions way back when you had to say what x could not equal. And then solve it, move the 3 over, divide by 2. I'm going off my paper. But we get x's 3/2. So my answers are 3/2 and negative 4. Yes, you're going to have fractions. That's okay. And so here's my negative 4. 3/2 is 1.5. Here's my 3/2. I don't have to be that picky about it. Intersect, and I can't draw a parabola from this angle. And it goes up. Okay, not too bad. 3, I have 2 more. Okay, example 4. And my phone doesn't die, we'll be good. 6u squared plus 19u equals 7. Okay, we want a 0 on the right side, so toss the 7 over. 6u squared plus 19u minus 7, don't forget to change the sign or it won't factor, 0. Then you'll have to do quadratic formula, and you don't know how to do that yet. Okay, so let's go, there's no GCF. I'm gonna try a 2u and a 3u here. A 7 and a 1. Yeah, that's gonna work. Okay, so we've got, let's see what I need, positive. 6u squared, first term. Now, I get 21u and a negative 2u. That will make a 19, positive 19u. That's the inner and the outer. Inner and outer have to add to the middle. The last is negative 7. Okay, now we need to figure out what makes each parenthesis 0. So I know that is going to be a 1/3 because 1/3 will make it 1 and 1 minus 1 is 0. But don't worry if you can't see it. Just make an equation, set this equal to 0, and solve. Move the 1 over, 3u, divide by 3, boom, u equals 1/3. Okay. Same with the other guy. I know this is going to be a negative 7/2. 2u plus 7 equals 0. Move the 7 over, negative 7. 2u, divide by 2. Remember back when all you had to do was solve an equation and you didn't have to do anything else? Okay, so we have negative 7/2. So my answers are 1/3 and negative 7/2. And my parabola, 1/3 is positive, negative 7/2 is down here somewhere. And there he is. Okay, last one. Phone is still alive. Number 5. This one has something a little different. Okay, look for GCF step 1. I have a GCF, this is already 0, so I don't have to move anything. I have a greatest common factor of 4 and also x squared. So I need to first pull it out. 2x minus 1 will give me this back, equals 0. Now I've got in the parenthesis here, 2x minus 1 equals 0. 2x, so x is going to be 1/2. But I have an x out here too, and we can't forget about that. If this is 0, just 0, then the whole thing's going to be 0. So these are the two answers. So x equals 0 and 1/2. So watch for your GCFs. There's 1/2. Also on your graphs, don't just put 2 dots, put the numbers on there. It's kind of common sense, but that's not very good there. And there we go.